is up, Stacking Ohana? This is Aloha Stacker, and welcome back to the channel and another video. And in today's video, we bring back History Mondays with the Presidential Silver Medal of Thomas Jefferson. But before we get started, I do have one piece of channel mail I want to show off, and this is from your you-know-who. Look at that envelope. You can tell who that's from, right? Maybe. Well, we'll find out in a second. Let's see what we got here. Ooh, a thank you. So what do we have here? It says, thank you. August 8th, 2021. Hello, Aloha Stacker. Thank you so much for what does it say? Oh, watching my videos. Your support means a lot to me. Your friend Oceans, Silver Oceans. And it looks like I got myself a new sticker. Very cool. And we'll go ahead and set that there for a second. And it looks like he sent a little gift. So let's pop this open and see what he sent. Oh, looks like we have ourselves a Roosevelt Dime. So take a look at that. It is a 1946. Any mint mark on this? Let's take a look. Looks like we do have a mint mark. It is a San Francisco mint. I will look up the mintage in this and put it in the description, as I always do with all my videos. So very cool. Thank you very much, Silver Oceans. Love your content. Please check his channel out if you don't know him. And I'll put a link to the description of his channel. We'll go ahead and set that right there so you can see it throughout the video. Now, let's go ahead and move on to today's Presidential Silver Medals. Okay, so the Presidential Silver Medals, they're coming out regularly. They've been coming out, I think, since around I'm not sure what year. I can't remember. But I have shown off a couple of the previous videos. And in the first one, I showed off George Washington. Here's George Washington. This was the first of the Presidential Medal series. So you have George Washington and then the Peace and Friendship. And they all so far have the same reverse or obverse. George Washington, President of the United States. So that was the first one in the series, and I did a video on that, so check that out. There'll be a link in the description for that, as well as John Adams, which was the second video I did, who was the second President of the United States, and same exact background, so that is cool. But now, today, we are going to show off the third in the series, and it comes in this really nice package. Too bad the Mint has decided to make its packaging really crappy these days, but they aren't for these, so that's good. So we pop this open. Let's go ahead and take a look at what we have here first. So first thing we have here is the Presidential Medals, Silver Medals Program, Certificate of Authenticity. And if you want to check that out, you can pause it and read it real fast, and then we'll move up to some specifications. And these are 1 ounce of silver. A little bit of information, so that is for that. Now let's go ahead and bust open. Now these still come in really nice clamshell cases. And as we pop it open, there we have it. United States Mint, and there's number 3. Thomas Jefferson. Let's go ahead and pull this out. We'll go ahead and set the case down and take a look. And as you can see, we have the same Peace and Friendship. And then we have Thomas Jefferson right here. So actually beautiful. This is honoring President Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, author of the Declaration of Independence and the third United States President. The obverse design depicts the side view of the president's head and shoulders. Inscriptions are Th. Jefferson, President of the U.S. and A.D. 1801. The reverse depicts a symbolic friendship handshake between the American government and the Indian nations. Above the hands are cross, pipe, and tomahawk. So that is very beautiful. I really like these medals. I know these aren't as popular as some of the other series in the U.S. Mint, but I really like them, and I've been collecting them one at a time. Above are the hands, cross, pipe, and tomahawk, like I said, with the inscription Peace and Friendship intertwined through the design. The U.S. Mint's presidential medals date back to the earliest days of the Republic. Medals were presented to the American Indian chiefs and other important leaders at events like treaty signings. So that is a pretty cool looking medal. So let's go ahead. What we'll do is we will go ahead and zoom in on this medal. See if we can make this nice and close. Zoom in on medals a little bit. And I'm going to read a little bit of history of the President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, the third president. Thomas Jefferson, born 1843 and died 1826, author of the Declaration of Independence and the third U.S. president, was a leading figure in America's early development. During the American Revolution, 1775 to 1783, Jefferson served in the Virginia legislature and the Continental Congress and was governor of Virginia. He later served as U.S. Minister to France and U.S. Secretary of State and was vice president under John Adams, 1735 to 1826. Jefferson, a Democratic Republican who thought the national government should have a limited role in citizens' lives, was elected president in 1800. During his 2 terms in office, 1801 to 1809, the U.S. purchased the Louisiana Territory, and Lewis and Clark explored the vast new acquisition. And I did a video on Lewis and Clark as well, so I'll put a link to that in the description as well if you want to check that out. Although Jefferson promoted the individual liberty, he was also a slave owner. After leaving office, he retired to his Virginia plantation, Monticello, and helped to found the University of Virginia. Thomas Jefferson was born April 13th, 1749, at Shadwell, a plantation on the large tract of land near present-day Charlottesville, Virginia. His father, Peter Jefferson, 1707 or 1708 to 757, was a successful planter and surveyor, and his mother, Jane Randolph Jefferson, 1720 to 1776, came from the prominent Virginia family. Thomas was their third child and eldest son. He had 6 sisters and 1 surviving brother. In 1762, Jefferson graduated from the College of William and Mary in Williamsburg, Virginia, where he reportedly enjoyed studying for 15 hours, then practicing violin for several more hours on a daily basis. He went on to study law under the tutelage of respected Virginia attorney George Wythe. There were no official law schools in America at the time, and Wythe's other pupils included future Chief Justice John Marshall and statesman Henry Clay. Jefferson began working as a lawyer in 1767. As a member of the colonial Virginia's House of Burgesses from 1769 to 1775, Jefferson, who was known for his reserved manner, gained recognition for penning a pamphlet, A Summary View of the Rights of British America, 1774, which declared that the British Parliament had no right to exercise authority over the American colonies. After his father died when Jefferson was a teen, the future president inherited the Shadwell Property. In 1768, Jefferson began clearing a mountaintop on the land in preparation for an elegant brick mansion he would construct there called Monticello, Little Mountain in Italian. Jefferson, who had keen interest in architecture and gardening, designed the home and its elaborate gardens himself. Over the course of his life, he remodeled and expanded Monticello and filled it with art, fine furnishings, and interesting gadgets of architectural details. He kept records of everything that happened at the 5,000-acre plantation, including daily weather reports and gardening journal and notes about his slaves and animals. On January 1st, 1772, Jefferson married Martha Wales Skelton, 1748 to 1782, a young widow. The couple moved to Monticello and eventually had 6 children. Only 2 of their daughters, Martha and Mary, survived into adulthood. In 1782, Jefferson's wife Martha died at age 33 following complications from childbirth. Jefferson was distraught and never remarried. However, it is believed he fathered more children with one of his slaves, Sally Hemings, who was also his wife's half-sister. Slavery was a contradictory issue in Jefferson's life. Although he was an advocate for individual liberty and at one point promoted a plan for gradual emancipation of slaves in America, he owned slaves throughout his life. Additionally, while he wrote in the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal, he believed African Americans were biologically inferior to whites and thought that 2 races could not coexist peacefully in freedom. Jefferson inherited some 175 slaves from his father and father-in-law and owned an estimated 600 slaves over the course of his life. He freed only a small number of them in his will. The majority were sold following his death. In 1775, with the American Revolutionary War recently underway, Jefferson was selected as a delegate to the Second Continental Congress. Although not known as a great public speaker, he was a gifted writer and at age 33 was asked to draft the Declaration of Independence. Before he began writing, Jefferson discussed the document's contents with a 5-member drafting committee that included John Adams and Benjamin Franklin. The Declaration of Independence, which explained why the 13 colonies wanted to be free from the British rule and also detailed the importance of individual rights and freedoms, was adopted on July 4th, 1776. In the fall of 1776, Jefferson resigned from the Continental Congress and was re-elected to the Virginia House of Delegates, formerly the House of Burgesses. He considered the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom, where he authored in the late 1770s and which Virginia lawmakers eventually passed in 1786, to be one of the first significant achievements of his career. It was the forerunner to the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which protects people's right to worship as they choose. From 1789 to 1781, Jefferson served as governor of Virginia, and from 1783 to 1784 did a second stint in Congress, then officially known since 1781 as the Congress of the Confederation. In 1785, he succeeded Benjamin Franklin as U.S. Minister to France. Jefferson's duties in Europe meant he could not attend the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia in the summer of 1787. However, he was kept informed of the proceedings to draft a new national constitution and later advocated for a bill including the Bill of Rights and presidential term limits. After returning to America in the fall of 1789, Jefferson accepted an appointment from President George Washington to become the new nation's first Secretary of State. In this post, Jefferson clashed with the U.S. Secretary of Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, over foreign policy and their differing interpretations of the U.S. Constitution. In the early 1790s, Jefferson, who favored strong state and local government, co-founded the Democratic Republican Party to oppose Hamilton's Federalist Party, which advocated for a strong national government with broad powers over the economy. In the presidential election of 1796, Jefferson ran against John Adams and received the second highest amount of votes, which according to the law at the time made him vice president. Jefferson ran against Adams again in the presidential election of 1800, which turned into a bitter battle between the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans. Jefferson defeated Adams. However, due to a flaw in the electoral system, Jefferson tied with fellow Democratic Republican Aaron Burr. The House of Representatives broke the tie and voted Jefferson into office. In order to avoid a repeat of this situation, Congress proposed the 12th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, which required separate voting for president and vice president. The amendment was ratified in 1804. Jefferson was sworn into office on March 4, 1801. His was the first presidential inauguration held in Washington, D.C. George Washington was inaugurated in New York in 1789, and in 1793 he was sworn into office in Philadelphia, as was his successor John Adams in 1797. Instead of riding a horse-drawn carriage, Jefferson broke with tradition and walked to and from the ceremony. One of the most significant achievements of Jefferson's first administration was the purchase of the Louisiana Territory from France for $15 million in 1803. At more than 820,000 square miles, Louisiana Purchase, which included lands extending between the Mississippi River and Rocky Mountains and the Gulf of Mexico to present-day Canada, effectively doubled the size of the United States. Jefferson then commissioned explorers Meriwether Lewis and William Clark to explore the uncharted land, plus the area beyond out to the Pacific Ocean. At the time, most Americans lived within 50 miles of the Atlantic Ocean. Lewis and Clark's expedition, known today as the Corps of Discovery, lasted from 1804 to 1806 and provided valuable information about the geography, American Indian tribes, and animals and plant life of the western part of the continent. In 1804, Jefferson ran for re-election and defeated Federalist candidate Charles Pinckney of South Carolina with more than 70% of the popular vote and the electoral count of 162 to 14. During his second term, Jefferson focused on trying to keep America out of Europeans' Napoleonic wars. However, after Great Britain and France, who were at war, both began harassing American merchant ships, Jefferson implemented the Embargo Act of 1807. The act, which closed the U.S. ports to foreign trade and proved unpopular with Americans and hurt the U.S. economy. It was repealed in 1809, and despite the president's attempt to maintain neutrality, the U.S. ended up going to war against Britain in the War of 1812. Jefferson chose not to run for a third term in 1808 and was succeeded in office by James Madison, a fellow Virginian and former U.S. Secretary of State. Jefferson spent his post-presidential years at Monticello, where he continued to pursue his many interests, including architecture, music, reading, and gardening. He also helped found the University of Virginia, which held its first classes in 1825. Jefferson was involved with designing the school's buildings and curriculum, and ensured that, unlike other American colleges at the time, the school had no religious affiliation or religious requirements for its students. Jefferson died at age 83 at Monticello on July 4, 1826, the 50th anniversary of the adoption of the Declaration of Independence. Coincidentally, John Adams, Jefferson's friend, former rival, and fellow signer of the Declaration of Independence, died the same day. Jefferson was buried at Monticello. However, due to significant debt the former president had accumulated during his life, his mansion, furnishing, and slaves were sold at auction following his death. Monticello was eventually acquired by a nonprofit organization, which opened it to the public in 1954. Jefferson remains an American icon. His face appears on the U.S. nickel and is carved into stone at Mount Rushmore. The Jefferson Memorial near the National Mall in Washington, D.C. was dedicated on April 13th, 1943, the 200th anniversary of Jefferson's birth. So that is the coin and the president, Thomas Jefferson, our third president of the United States, and another wonderful, beautiful medal created by the United States Mint. I know, like I said, I know these aren't as popular as for many people, but I really do like them. I think they're really neat. They're really neat medals. And the next one we will have will be James Madison, which I do have already, so expect that to come soon. Although I think for the next History Monday series, I think we're going to shift course a little bit and do a history on something else. I think we're going to go back to some Greek mythology. I think we're going to do Poseidon. I think Poseidon's going to be the next one, so pretty cool. So if you're interested in that, let me know. And let me know if you're excited to hear about Poseidon. But other than that, I want to thank everybody as usual for watching the videos, and please like and subscribe and share this video. U.S. history is something that we cannot forget, and it's important. So I appreciate all of you. And as always, I want you to have a wonderful week ahead, and aloha and mahalo.